We begin with a critical day on Capitol Hill as Congress steps up for our allies overseas. In the next hour, debate is set to begin in the House on a long-delayed foreign aid package. Votes are expected this afternoon on separate bills to support Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. The package also includes humanitarian relief for Gaza. And to get these bills across the finish line, rookie Speaker Mike Johnson must rely on Democrats as he faces far-right backlash. In fact, he might also need the support of Democrats to keep his job. 3 GOP House members are now pushing a motion to vacate, which would force a vote on removing Johnson as Speaker. Joining us now, Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal from the great state of Washington. She is the chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. Good morning, all.
Good morning.
Well, did you expect to be here this Saturday?
I did not.
Happy Saturday to you.
I had plans, but here I am.
Here you are. And then how do you think the vote is going to play out today? 2 parts. How, overall, do you think it's going to pass, and how will you vote on the separate bills?
Yeah. Well, I'm so happy that we're finally going to be able to vote on a Ukraine aid bill that is a standalone bill. It will pass, I believe, with every Democrat voting for it. It is really important aid. I think there will be some Republicans that vote for it, but how many, I don't know. I think on the Israel, all the bills are going to pass. On the Israel aid bill, I think you will see a good contingent of us that are voting no. I'm going to vote no on that bill because it does not include any conditions at all on aid to the Netanyahu government. It does not differentiate between offensive aid and defensive aid. I think many of us who will vote no on that bill have consistently supported Iron Dome funding and other defensive aid for Israel. But we cannot continue to watch the carnage that is happening in Gaza and have the United States military assistance be a part of that carnage. So to me and to many of us who are voting no, this is sort of an Iraq war moment. This is a moment where I think the public is not with us. Unlike the Iraq war, actually, during the Iraq war, that first vote where there were 132 plus Democrats voting against going into Iraq at that time. This is a situation where we don't even have the public with us. And we have not seen the kind of restrictions from the White House and from the administration. So whatever happens after this is the first time that Congress will be voting on offensive aid to Israel and to the Netanyahu government, who has been callous about the lives of children in Gaza, women in Gaza, innocent civilians, the death and destruction, the famine that is now happening and has taken hold in northern Gaza is not something that I believe we can be party to.
Congresswoman, a couple of points on the difference between the Ukraine and the Israel piece. How, for a lot of folks, they try to see this as a joint package. That, you know, in terms of supporting Ukraine, given what Russia's doing there, in terms of supporting Israel, in given what Hamas is doing there. How do members of the Progressive Caucus peel off that particular piece, specifically given everything that we know on the ground there? And I guess the second part of it would be, if Joe Biden came out and said, called for a ceasefire, which I think is one of the big issues for members of the caucus, what would you expect Netanyahu to do?
Well, the
president, if he didn't do it, would you hold the president accountable for Netanyahu not doing that thing?
The president has already called for a ceasefire.
Right.
He recently did that. He also said that he would consider conditioning aid, and he tied it at that time to if the Netanyahu government was going to go into Rafah. And the fact is that there are strikes in Rafah, but there hasn't been a full-scale invasion yet. But I think that this is something where you have to remember, Michael, we are the largest backer of aid to Israel. the United States, other than Israel itself. We will be there for the defensive aid. That is the Iron Dome. That is if Iran or Hezbollah are going to launch strikes, just like you saw.
Recently, right.
I appreciated and applauded the president working with the global community to make sure to repel that attack from Iran. But what we cannot do is allow Netanyahu to continue to drag us into the morass of what he has done in Gaza. And frankly, for the security and peace, safety of the Israeli people and the Palestinian people, the quickest way to get to anything that is going to assure peace and safety for both is to stop this war on Gaza and to bring home the hostages, to get humanitarian assistance in, and that creates the space to think about what a long-term permanent solution is. So I think that, I think the president does have the responsibility at this point to change the calculus for Netanyahu. Because right now, there's no reason for Netanyahu to change his behavior. He's getting all this aid. He would not be able to wage this war on Gaza without the United States.
So, Representative Jayapal, let's talk about the Ukraine piece of this, specifically the stakes at this point in the timeline. Politico reporting this week, the intelligence shown to lawmakers last week and described by two members who have seen it, built on weeks of reports that have alarmed members of Congress. On Thursday, CIA Director William Burns warned that barring more U.S. aid, Ukraine, quote, could lose on the battlefield by the end of 2024. It is apparently that intelligence that finally motivated Speaker Johnson to action. Do you think there is the possibility this aid passes and we look back at this moment with 2020 vision and say, by the time they did this, it was already too late?
Well, I think that is a very serious question, Alicia. And the reality is Republicans have refused to believe intelligence reports. Republicans have refused to bring the aid package to the floor. As you remember, they brought an Israel aid package without the Ukraine aid package. And that is why Democrats at that time said, no, we need to have the Ukraine aid package. And so I think that this is a really important moment. It absolutely will pass. I will be enthusiastically supporting that Ukraine aid bill. And as I said to Michael, every Democrat, I think, will. I will say that this sort of goes to your question earlier, but also to yours, Alicia, that we had Timothy Snyder in, not to my committee, but Ro Khanna, I think it was Oversight. Ro Khanna asked him a really important question about this. And he said that it was a mistake to link the two because they are very different situations. And linking the two actually may have delayed and made it much harder to get that Ukraine aid across the finish line. Now, I think that, maybe at that time it seemed like a good idea, but we've seen that we have full Democratic support. We just needed a handful of Republicans who weren't willing to come along to get that Ukraine aid to the floor. So let's get it out there. In the bill, there is a provision that allows it to go in an expedited fashion to Ukraine because we all understand that stopping Putin's march across Europe and, the destruction that would cause with his dictatorship is very, very critical, not just to Ukraine, but to the entire world.
I want to play for folks what I almost called him Speaker Jeffries. Goodness.
Well, he should be.
Well, I just think the way the Democrats are acting, he very well could be. The way Democrats are carrying this legislation over the line. Democratic leader Jeffries, during his weekly address, had this to say about the negotiations about these aid packages, foreign aid packages. Take a listen, folks.
We still have to get the national security bills over the finish line. In that statement, that's what we made clear, that we have to do the business of the American people. We've been waiting for months, unnecessarily, because of gamesmanship and partisanship and brinksmanship on the other side of the aisle.
We've been waiting for months.
That's
Ukraine
right.
has been waiting for months. I was really struck by the Politico piece that Alicia noted about how the intelligence and the briefing from CIA Director Burns changed the mind of a number of members, and that's what changed Johnson's mind. When Speaker Johnson gave his remarks, and he didn't do a press conference, he didn't take any questions, but when he gave his remarks, he talked about the fact that his son is enrolling into the Naval Academy this fall, and this is a live fire situation, and and we don't want to be in a position where we have to send our American sons and daughters on. Why is that what it took? Because it has been a dire situation in Ukraine for months.
That's right.
This is what has been the intelligence for months.
That's right.
What is so different now?
It's because Donald Trump doesn't want that aid to go through. Marjorie Taylor Greene didn't want that aid to go through. They tried to act like that intelligence wasn't real. And I think that I think we should call him Speaker Jeffries, because if you look at every single consequential thing that government has had to do, from the debt ceiling, going back to the McCarthy days, to now the appropriations bill, this aid package, it has been Democrats and our leader, Hakeem Jeffries, who has made it possible for the government to move forward. And that, I think that is a complicated dynamic in terms of the fact that this is a Republican speaker who does many things that you and I, all of us, don't agree with. I mean, this is an anti-abortion, anti-immigrant, anti-LGBTQ, anti-democracy speaker who just went down and kissed the ring of Donald Trump and talked about election integrity, when we know that everything that Donald Trump is about is taking away election integrity. But he is doing the right thing on this issue, and I think that Leader Jeffries really, for all intents and purposes, is the speaker for any consequential bill, because it is Democrats that are going to provide the votes today to get Ukraine across the table.
Ooh, Michael. I thought Michael was like,
I'm not arguing with it, because that's what it looks like. At least that's what it is.
It is.
In the course of things. So how are Democrats assessing sort of the politics of this moment, where you conceivably, unlike with Kevin McCarthy, do find interest among some Democrats to, quote, save this speaker for purposes of getting, like we just talked about, these sort of big things done. But there's not going to be a lot of that on the agenda after this. So then it becomes sort of a careful what you wish for kind of bargain, doesn't it? When, Speaker Johnson is still going to be a part of the Republican caucus, a Freedom Caucus member, et cetera. And so he'll be bringing stuff on that a lot of folks may be looking a little hanky at Democrats going, y'all kept this going.
Right.
If I'm in the Democrats' position, it is not a position I would want to take. I didn't, put the noose around his neck, so why are you asking me to take it off, kind of deal.
Yeah.
How are you guys assessing that inside the caucus to some extent?
Well, it hasn't, we haven't engaged in that conversation in full, because it's a process question and it hasn't come up yet. But I think that I have said directly to Leader Jeffries, and I know he's thinking very carefully about this, and he will be the one to make the decision. But I have said we cannot just save the speaker without getting something really substantial for it. And in my mind, it should be that if essentially Hakeem Jeffries is going to function as our shadow speaker, then we move the big bills where there is bipartisan agreement, but we do not bring to the floor the things that Republicans are trying to use to win the election in November. We should not allow that to happen. If they need our votes for these consequential bills, then we need to have some sort of an agreement about what we're getting for that. I mean, this is an unprecedented situation. Under the Republicans, Michael, 7 rules have failed. I think it was 4 under McCarthy and 3 under Johnson. 7 rules have failed. And if you, again, look at even last night, many of us were in deep confusion because we never vote for Republican rules. There have been instances where the leadership decides that a few Democrats are needed to get a rule across the line under this chaos of the Republican majority. But this was a situation where I think it was very confusing, because we did want the aid package to move forward, and progressives in particular had fought to separate them so that we could vote our conscience and a very important moral vote on the aid to Netanyahu, but then the aid to Ukraine. And so progressives were successful working with our leadership, with Leader Jeffries. And, of course, it might be beneficial for the Republicans, too, because they don't want to vote for the Ukraine aid package, but they do want to vote for the Israel aid package. So I think, we will follow Leader Jeffries, but we should be very thoughtful and very careful, because otherwise, if we save the speaker without anything to show for it, we may be contributing to our base saying, you're the ones who allowed him to continue to be speaker, and now he's bringing all these terrible things to the floor that are about winning the election in November.
Representative Jayapal, let's stay on that theme about winning elections. The Congressional Progressive Caucus this week released a list of progressive agenda items that includes a $17 per hour minimum wage by 2028, capping child care costs at 7% of income for all families, expanding Social Security benefits. This has been compared to FDR's New Deal. I've also heard members of your caucus say this is about a statement of priorities, right? That is the value of an agenda. What do you say to members of the progressive base who say a statement of priorities is not enough if we don't see action?
Yeah, Alicia, you see a big smile on my face because I love talking about our proposition agenda. So much of the time in politics we spend talking about what we're against. Here is a clear set of things that we are for. This was voted on by 103 members of the Progressive Caucus. A supermajority participated, and I think it was almost 95, 97% that approved this agenda. So this has a lot of buy-in from the inside and also from outside groups. The things that are on this are possible and populist and affect a big number of people. Those were sort of our criteria. So as much as we love certain things that we don't think are possible, some of those things aren't on there. We're talking about stopping the privatization of Medicare and expanding Medicare benefits to include dental, vision, and hearing. But my signature bill of Medicare for All is not on there because we know that under this president and this situation that we're in, we probably can't achieve it. The things that are on this agenda are achievable. And we can go to people and say, look at how much we did. We didn't get everything done, but this is the next thing on the page. And progressives teed it up with Build Back Better because that universal child care, that investment in housing, a huge issue, the comprehensive immigration reform, some of the advancing justice components of this, those were all things that were teed up by almost the entirety of the Democratic caucus, with the exception of a couple of senators, Democratic senators. That's part of the reason it didn't pass, because of the filibuster. And you'll see in the agenda that one of the things we tackle is making democracy work, which means not just changing the rulers, but also changing the rules. We got to get rid of that filibuster so that we can pass voting rights, so that we can pass codify abortion rights, those critical issues. So I believe this is possible, and it is what will motivate our base to actually fight for something, be a party of proposition, not just a party of opposition.
So now that's a debate you and I can have together.
Hey everyone, MSNBC has a new and improved app. You'll get real-time alerts and analysis, live blogs, in-depth essays, video highlights, and the best 2024 election coverage. Download the new MSNBC app. Here's how to do it. You tap on the App Store on your phone. You hit search on the bottom right corner. You type in MSNBC. You click on the MSNBC app. You click on Get or the cloud icon and enjoy it.